Hello, dear friends. I'm so glad you could join me today. My name is Joanne Woodward. I'm 69 years young, and life, I thought, had settled into a quiet rhythm here in my cozy home. But sometimes the biggest storms gather under the calmest skies. What I'm about to share is how an innocent whisper from my 9-year-old grandson shattered the perfect image of our family, revealing a truth so cold, so calculated, it changed everything forever. Please, settle in. My grandson Thomas, all of 9 years old, was usually a whirlwind of energy, but that Sunday afternoon, he sat beside me on the floral sofa, unnaturally still. His small hand, usually sticky with some playground adventure or cookie crumbs, slipped into mine, cold and trembling. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the familiar living room, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. A peaceful scene utterly at odds with the tremor running through my grandson's small frame. Amelia, my son Rob's wife, was in the kitchen, humming cheerfully as she arranged cookies on a porcelain plate, the picture of domestic bliss she so effortlessly projected. "Grandma," Thomas whispered, his voice barely audible, his eyes wide with a fear that didn't belong on a child's face. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "You need to watch her. When you're not looking, she's different." The words hung in the air, heavy and chilling. "Different? Different how, sweetheart?" I tried to keep my voice light, reassuring, but a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. He squeezed my hand harder, his knuckles white. She says mean things, Grandma, about Mommy Maria. And she talks on her phone, quiet, like she's hiding. Mommy Maria, my late daughter-in-law, Thomas's mother, taken from us far too soon 3 years ago. Amelia usually spoke of her with such reverence, such practiced sympathy. Mean things? My mind struggled to reconcile the image of the smiling, helpful Amelia with the hidden cruelty Thomas was suggesting. "And," Thomas continued, his voice dropping even lower, his eyes darting towards the kitchen doorway, "I saw her looking at Grandpa Robert's old papers in the study yesterday. She took pictures with her phone. My late husband's study, his sanctuary, filled with his books and meticulously organized files. Amelia had no reason to be in there, let alone photographing his private documents." A cold dread, sharp and unwelcome, pierced through my initial disbelief. I looked at Thomas's earnest, terrified face, and then towards the kitchen where Amelia's cheerful humming continued, suddenly sounding hollow, discordant. That whisper, born of a child's fear, was the first crack in the beautiful facade, the first hint of the darkness lurking just beneath the surface of our carefully reconstructed family life. My world tilted slightly on its axis, the familiar ground suddenly feeling treacherous and uncertain. Before Amelia, before the unsettling whispers and the cold dread, there was just life. A simple, hard-working life woven with the strong threads of love and sacrifice. My husband, Robert Sr., was a good man, a quiet man, a skilled engineer whose hands could fix anything, including, I always thought, the worries in my heart. We weren't wealthy, not by a long shot. We lived in this same modest, 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood of Phoenix, Arizona, for over 40 years. Robert worked tirelessly at his firm, often coming home late, smelling faintly of machine oil and blueprints, but always with a tired smile for me and our son, Rob. I was a school librarian, a job I adored, surrounded by the quiet rustle of pages and the bright, curious eyes of children. But my real job, the one that consumed my heart and soul, was being a mother. Rob was our only child, a blessing we had waited for, prayed for. From the moment I held him, I knew my life's purpose. I scrimped and saved, mended clothes until they were threadbare, turned leftovers into inventive meals, all so Rob could have the opportunities we never did. Good schooling, music lessons, a chance to go to college without crushing debt. Robert Sr. shared that dream. We were a team, pouring all our energy, all our modest resources into our son's future. There were lean years, times when unexpected medical bills or car repairs stretched us thin, but we always managed. Our home was filled with the smell of baking bread, the sound of Robert's gentle humming as he worked in his garage workshop, and Rob's laughter echoing in the backyard. When Rob met Maria, it felt like our family was finally complete. She was everything I could have hoped for in a daughter-in-law, kind, gentle, with a smile that could light up a room and a deep, genuine love for my son. She became the daughter I never had. We'd spend hours in the kitchen, sharing recipes and stories, her easy laughter mingling with mine. The birth of Thomas was a joy beyond measure, a tiny miracle who filled our home with new life, new hope. Maria was a natural mother, patient and loving, her world revolving around her son and her husband. We were happy, truly happy. Then came the accident. A rainy Tuesday, a slick road, a moment of impact that shattered our world. Losing Maria felt like losing a part of myself. The light seemed to dim in our house, in Rob's eyes, even in little Thomas, who, at barely 6, couldn't comprehend why his mommy wasn't coming home. Rob was devastated, adrift in grief. He threw himself into work, becoming a shadow in his own home. And I stepped in, as mothers do. I retired early from the library, moved in temporarily, then more permanently, to care for Thomas, to hold the fragments of our family together. It wasn't a burden, it was love. Keeping Maria's memory alive for her son, ensuring he felt safe and cherished, became my new purpose. Those years were difficult, marked by quiet grief and the shared responsibility of raising a little boy who missed his mother terribly. But we managed, finding solace in routine, in each other's presence, in the enduring love that bound us. Amelia entered our lives about a year after Maria's passing. Rob met her through work. She was in the marketing department, bright, ambitious, and strikingly beautiful. At first, her presence felt like a tentative sunrise after a long night. She was charming, attentive, full of compliments about the house, my cooking, even Robert Sr.'s old workshop. She seemed genuinely interested in Thomas, bringing him little gifts, asking about his day at school, praising his drawings. "You're such a wonderful grandmother, Joanne," she'd say, her voice dripping with admiration. "Rob and Thomas are so lucky to have you." I wanted to believe her. I desperately wanted Rob to find happiness again, for Thomas to have a mother figure in his life. Amelia seemed perfect, almost too perfect. She quickly won Rob over. He started smiling again. That deep, haunted look in his eyes began to fade. He credited Amelia with bringing him back to life. How could I object? How could I harbor doubts when my son seemed happy for the first time in years? Yet, small things began to prick at my consciousness, tiny inconsistencies I tried to ignore. There was the time I overheard her on the phone in the hallway, her voice sharp and impatient, discussing what sounded like debts or bills. When she saw me, her tone instantly shifted back to saccharine sweetness. "Just sorting out some boring insurance stuff," she'd chirped, waving a dismissive hand. Then there were the comments about the house. Initially complimentary, they slowly morphed into subtle criticisms veiled as suggestions. "Joanne, this kitchen could really use an update, don't you think? For safety, of course. Or, have you ever thought about how much this house might be worth? Property values around here have skyrocketed." They were casual remarks, easily dismissed, but they began to accumulate, leaving a faint residue of unease. Her interactions with Thomas also started showing hairline cracks. In front of Rob and me, she was the doting stepmother. But when she thought we weren't looking, her smile sometimes seemed strained, her patience thin. Once, I walked into the living room to find her speaking sharply to Thomas about spilling juice on the rug. Her face was tight with annoyance, a stark contrast to her usual calm demeanor. The moment she saw me, her expression softened instantly. "Oh, Joanne, just teaching Thomas about being careful." "Accidents happen," she said brightly. But Thomas shrank away from her, his eyes downcast. I told myself she was just adjusting, that blending a family takes time. I excused her impatience, her occasional sharp tone. Rob adored her, and for his sake, I pushed my doubts away, burying them under a layer of forced optimism. Looking back now, the signs were all there, scattered like warnings I refused to read. Her excessive interest in our finances, the slight edge to her voice when talking about Maria, the way Thomas sometimes flinched when she entered the room unexpectedly. They were whispers in the wind, easily ignored until they coalesced into the terrified words of my grandson on that quiet Sunday afternoon. Thomas's whispered words, "She says mean things, Grandma, about Mommy Maria. She took pictures of Grandpa Robert's papers. Didn't just plant a seed of doubt. They shattered the carefully constructed peace I had clung to. For a moment, the world felt unreal, the cheerful sounds from the kitchen grating against the sudden, icy fear gripping my heart. My first instinct was denial, a desperate urge to protect the fragile happiness my son seemed to have found. Thomas must have misunderstood. Children imagine things. Amelia wouldn't. She couldn't. But the tremor in his small hand, the genuine terror in his eyes, that was real. That couldn't be dismissed. I held him close, murmuring reassurances I didn't feel. "It's okay, sweetheart. Grandma's here." But as I looked across the room, past the comforting familiarity of the floral sofa and the ticking grandfather clock, towards the kitchen where Amelia was now arranging cookies with meticulous care, her bright smile felt like a mosque. The disjointed memories of the past year rushed back. The veiled questions about money, the flashes of impatience with Thomas, the overly perfect facade. They weren't just isolated incidents anymore. They were potential pieces of a disturbing puzzle. Thomas's fear was the catalyst. It forced me to confront the unease I had suppressed for so long. I could no longer afford to look away, to make excuses. If there was even a shred of truth in what Thomas said, if Amelia was capable of speaking ill of Maria or prying into Robert Sr.'s private affairs, what else was she capable of? The thought sent a fresh wave of cold through me. My protective instinct, dormant for too long perhaps, roared to life. This wasn't just about my unease anymore. It was about Thomas. It was about protecting Maria's child, Robert Sr.'s grandson, from whatever darkness Amelia might be hiding. In that moment, sitting on the sofa with my trembling grandson clinging to me, a quiet resolve settled within me. I wouldn't confront Amelia directly, not yet. That would be foolish, tipping my hand before I understood the game. But I wouldn't ignore Thomas's fears either. I would watch, I would listen, I would open my eyes and truly see. The time for willful blindness was over. I had to know the truth, for Thomas's sake, for Rob's, and for the memory of the family we once were. The cheerful humming from the kitchen continued, but now it sounded like a warning siren in the sudden, sharp clarity of my fear. My resolve to uncover the truth solidified into a quiet, constant hum beneath the surface of my daily interactions. I became an observer in my own home, noticing nuances I'd previously overlooked. The way Amelia's eyes lingered a fraction too long on expensive items and catalogs, the slight tension in her jaw when Rob mentioned saving for Thomas's college fund, the overly effusive way she praised my simple meals while simultaneously mentioning lavish restaurants she'd supposedly visited with clients. Thomas became my silent co-conspirator. I didn't press him for details, not wanting to frighten him further, but I paid closer attention when he spoke about his time alone with Amelia. His reports were fragmented, childlike observations. Amelia was talking angry on her phone again, or Amelia told me not to tell you I didn't eat my vegetables. Small things, perhaps, but they painted a picture of impatience and secrecy. The real turning point came unexpectedly a few days later. Amelia announced she was going out for a much-needed spa afternoon, a gift from a grateful client. Rob encouraged her to go, telling her she deserved it. She left in a cloud of expensive perfume, looking radiant. A few hours later, Thomas was playing quietly in the living room while I tidied up the kitchen. I went into the shared home office, a small room off the hallway where Rob sometimes worked and where Amelia kept her laptop, to retrieve a cookbook. As I reached for the shelf, my eyes fell on Amelia's sleek, silver laptop left open on the desk. Usually, she was meticulous about closing it and password, protecting it. This carelessness was uncharacteristic. A wave of guilt washed over me, but Thomas's fearful face flashed in my mind. Hesitantly, I glanced at the screen. An email program was open. Most were innocuous work-related messages, but one subject line jumped out. Urgent account transfer confirmation. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't her work email. The address seemed personal, unfamiliar. My hands trembling, I clicked it open. The email was brief, confirming a recent transfer of $5,000 from an account I didn't recognize to another account, also unfamiliar. But what made my blood run cold were the attached notes. Final payment, discretion assured. Project, retirement fund proceeding. Retirement fund, discretion, final payment. What project? Whose retirement fund? It certainly wasn't mine or Rob's. Panic surged. I quickly checked the date. The transfer happened the day after Thomas saw Amelia photographing Robert Sr.'s papers in the study. Was there a connection? I scrolled down, looking for previous emails in the thread, but there were none. This message stood alone, stark and incriminating. Before I could delve deeper, I heard the sound of Amelia's car pulling into the driveway. Adrenaline shot through me. I slammed the laptop shut, my mind racing. Had she seen the email I opened? Would she know? I hurried out of the office, my heart pounding, trying to appear nonchalant as Amelia walked in, glowing from her spa treatment. "Oh, Joanne, it was heavenly," she exclaimed, dropping her handbag onto the entryway table. "You should really treat yourself sometime." I forced a smile, the incriminating email burning in my memory. The laptop, the secret email, the cryptic retirement fund. It wasn't definitive proof of anything specific, but it was the first solid piece of evidence that Amelia was involved in something hidden, something potentially illicit, something connected to finances. Thomas hadn't imagined it. My unease wasn't paranoia. Amelia had a secret life, and I had just stumbled upon its digital footprint. The game had truly begun. The discovery of the email gnawed at me. Project Retirement Fund. The phrase echoed in my mind, sinister and vague. I knew I couldn't decipher this alone, nor could I continue carrying this burden in silence. Rob was still too enchanted by Amelia. Confronting him directly with such flimsy evidence would likely backfire, making him defensive and pushing Amelia to be even more careful. I needed someone objective, someone fiercely loyal, someone with a sharp mind who wouldn't dismiss my fears. I needed Margaret. Margaret O'Connell had been my best friend since high school. We'd seen each other through awkward teenage years, weddings, babies, career changes, and the heartbreaks of widowhood. She was pragmatic, sharp-tongued, and possessed an uncanny ability to see through nonsense. If anyone could help me navigate this murky situation, it was Margaret. I called her that evening, my voice tight with anxiety. "Margaret, can I come over? There's something I need to talk to you about. It's important." Her response was immediate, sensing the urgency in my tone. "Joanne, what's wrong?" "Of course, come right now. Kettle's on." An hour later, I was sitting in Margaret's cozy, cluttered kitchen, a steaming mug of chamomile tea clutched in my hands. The familiar scent of lavender and old books usually calmed me. But tonight, nothing could soothe the turmoil inside. "All right, spill it," Margaret said, settling across from me, her gaze steady and focused. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Taking a deep breath, I recounted everything, starting with Thomas's whispered fears, my own dismissed observations, and culminating in the discovery of the cryptic email on Amelia's laptop. I described the $5,000 transfer, the retirement fund project, the date coinciding with Amelia snooping in Robert Sr.'s study. Margaret listened intently, her brow furrowed, occasionally interrupting with a sharp question. "She photographed Robert's papers? What kind of papers does he even have in there?" "I don't know exactly," I admitted. "He was always very private about his finances, even with me. Some old investment portfolios, property deeds maybe. He inherited some land from his uncle years ago. And this email address, you didn't recognize it?" "No, completely unfamiliar. And the money was transferred between accounts I've never heard of." Margaret leaned back, tapping a thoughtful finger against her chin. "Okay. So the new wife is snooping in your late husband's private papers, taking pictures, and then large sums of money start moving between secret accounts under a project name that sounds suspiciously like your potential future funds?" She looked me straight in the eye. "Joanne, this stinks to high heaven." Hearing Margaret voice my fears so bluntly was both terrifying and validating. "But what does it mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What could she be doing?" "Could be anything," Margaret mused. "Identity theft, embezzlement if she has access to Rob's accounts, setting up fake investments. Maybe trying to access something Robert Sr. left specifically for you or Thomas that she wants to divert." That mention of discretion assured sounds professional, like she hired someone. Margaret's pragmatic assessment cut through my emotional fog. "What do I do, Margaret? I feel so lost." "Rob is blind to it all." First, Margaret said firmly, "You did the right thing coming to me. Second, we need more information. Guesswork won't cut it. We need proof Rob can't ignore." She leaned forward, her eyes determined. "Tell me everything you can remember about Robert Sr.'s finances. Any old lawyer names, bank names, investment advisors, anything he might have mentioned, even in passing." We spent the next hour dredging up fragmented memories. Robert Sr. had used an old college friend, a lawyer named Arthur Jenkins, for some legal work years ago. He banked primarily at the main downtown branch of City National. He occasionally mentioned stocks, but never specifics. "Okay, it's a start," Margaret said, scribbling notes. "Arthur Jenkins, City National. We need to be careful, Joanne. If Amelia is doing something illegal, she might be monitoring your communications, even Rob's." She looked at me seriously. "From now on, we talk in person or use my phone. No emails, no texts from your house line or cell." The thought that my own home might not be safe sent another shiver down my spine. "And Thomas?" I asked, my voice tight with worry. "We need to protect Thomas. He's the one who alerted you. If Amelia suspects he knows something, we keep him close," Margaret stated firmly. "You spend as much time with him as possible, and we need to find out exactly what she's saying or doing to him when you're not around. Maybe a discreet recorder?" The idea felt like a betrayal, spying in my own home. But Margaret was right. Thomas's safety was paramount. "All right," I agreed, my voice heavy but resolved. "Let's find out what Amelia is really up to." Leaving Margaret's house that night, I felt less alone, but the path ahead seemed darker and more dangerous than ever. We were no longer just dealing with suspicions. We were potentially facing calculated criminal activity happening right under my roof. The following days were lived on a knife's edge. With Margaret's help, I purchased a small, voice-activated recorder, disguised as a simple digital photo frame, placing it discreetly on a bookshelf in the living room. A room where Amelia often took phone calls or spoke with Thomas. Every evening, after Amelia and Rob had gone to bed, I'd retrieve the tiny memory card with trembling hands, my heart pounding as I listened back through the day's captured sounds, hoping for clarity, dreading what I might find. The first few days yielded little. Snippets of innocuous conversation, Thomas asking for snacks, Amelia arranging appointments, but then, on the third day, I caught something. Amelia was on the phone, her voice low and tense, different from her usual cheerful tone. "No, he doesn't suspect a thing. Rob is completely wrapped around my finger. Yes, the transfer went through. Phase 1 complete. The retirement fund is secure. Just need to finalize the access to the main trust. Joanne is easy. She trusts me implicitly." Trust. The word felt like acid. She was discussing the retirement fund again, confirming Rob's ignorance and my perceived naivety. And what was this main trust? Did Robert Sr. have a trust fund I didn't know about? Margaret and I met again, this time at a noisy coffee shop downtown for anonymity. I played her the recording. Her eyes narrowed. "Main trust. Joanne, did Robert Sr. ever mention a trust?" "No, never," I whispered, bewildered. "He handled all the major finances. He always just told me not to worry." "Okay, new lead," Margaret declared, making a note. "We need to find out if Robert Sr. set up a trust, possibly with that lawyer, Arthur Jenkins, or through City National." Meanwhile, Margaret had done some digging of her own through public records and online searches. Nothing illegal, just careful observation. Amelia's declared income from her marketing job seems modest, Margaret reported, stirring her latte. Certainly not enough to explain the designer handbag she was carrying last week or the $5,000 transfers. And I checked property records. She doesn't own any property, and there are no recent large inheritances under her maiden name, Thorne. The financial discrepancies were piling up. Where was the money coming from, and where was it going? The recorder provided another chilling piece the next day. This time, it captured Amelia speaking to Thomas when she thought they were alone. "Stop asking so many questions, Thomas. Your mommy Maria is gone, okay? This is my house now. And if you tell Grandma Joanne I said that, you won't get any dessert for a week. Understand?" Her voice was cold, sharp, utterly devoid of the warmth she feigned in front of us. Hearing her speak Maria's name with such dismissiveness, using threats to silence my grandson, It ignited a protective fury within me. I saved the recording immediately, the evidence of her emotional cruelty now undeniable. Margaret suggested contacting Arthur Jenkins, Robert Sr.'s old lawyer. It was a long shot. He was semi-retired, but worth trying. Finding his number took some effort, but I finally reached him. After explaining who I was, carefully omitting my suspicions about Amelia, I simply asked if he recalled handling any estate planning, specifically a trust, for Robert Woodward Sr. Robert Woodward. Mr. Jenkins mused, his voice raspy with age. Yes, I remember Robert. Fine man. We did set up something years ago, a blind trust, quite substantial actually, intended for Joanne upon his passing, and then for the grandson, Thomas, I believe. Very specific instructions, a blind trust. Robert Sr. had set up a substantial fund for me and Thomas, and Amelia was trying to access it. The retirement fund wasn't my retirement. It was likely the name she'd given her scheme to siphon our funds. Mr. Jenkins, I asked, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. Could anyone else access that trust? His current wife, perhaps? Absolutely not, Jenkins stated firmly. Robert was very clear. Only Joanne, or a legally appointed guardian if she were incapacitated. Why do you ask, Mrs. Woodward? Is there a problem? No problem, I lied quickly. Just sorting through his papers. Thank you for your time. Incapacitated. The word hung in the air. Was that Amelia's endgame? To somehow gain guardianship over me to access the trust? The pieces were falling into place, revealing a picture far more sinister than I had initially feared. The snooping in Robert Sr.'s study wasn't just curiosity. She was likely searching for information about this trust. The $5,000 transfer was probably payment to someone helping her. Maybe a shady financial advisor. Maybe someone forging documents. I reported back to Margaret, relaying the conversation with Jenkins. A blind trust, Margaret breathed. That explains everything. She wants control. She needs you declared unfit, Joanne. The evidence was mounting. Financial secrecy, attempts to access a hidden trust, emotional manipulation of Thomas, lies about her own finances. We had motive opportunity through Rob's trust and her access to the house. And now, recorded evidence of her duplicity and cruelty. The picture was becoming horrifyingly clear. Armed with the knowledge of the blind trust and the recordings of Amelia's deceitful phone calls and harsh words to Thomas, Margaret and I met again, this time with a grim sense of purpose. The puzzle pieces were assembled. The picture they formed was one of calculated greed and chilling manipulation. We knew Amelia was after the trust Robert Sr. had set up for me and Thomas. We knew she was using Rob's ignorance and my perceived frailty. We knew she was emotionally mistreating Thomas. And we suspected the $5,000 transfers were part of her scheme, possibly payments for illicit help. We can't go to Rob yet, Margaret stated, echoing my thoughts. He's still too infatuated. Showing him the recordings now might make him warn her, and she'll just cover her tracks better. We need something irrefutable, something he witnesses himself. Like what? I asked, feeling weary but resolute. How do we expose her without putting Thomas at risk or pushing Rob further away? Margaret leaned forward, her eyes glinting with strategic thought. We need to catch her in the act. Or, better yet, set a trap that forces her hand, makes her reveal her true intentions in front of Rob. We brainstormed possibilities. Could we leak information about the trust, making Amelia think access was imminent, and see how she reacts? Could we set up a situation where her cruelty towards Thomas becomes undeniable? What about Robert Sr.'s study? I suggested. She was snooping in there. What if there's something else she's looking for? What if we bait the hook? We knew Robert Sr. kept meticulous records. While Mr. Jenkins handled the trust, perhaps there were other investment details, property documents related to the inherited land, or even old bank statements in the study that Amelia thought were related to the trust, or represented separate assets she could target. Okay, Margaret said, catching on. What if you accidentally leave some authentic-looking, but ultimately worthless or misleading, financial documents in a prominent place in the study? Something that looks valuable, related to investments or offshore accounts maybe? Something she might find if she snoops again? And we install a hidden camera," Margaret finished. "Not just audio this time, video. We catch her red-handed, going through the papers, maybe making a phone call about her find. Then we show Rob the footage. The idea was risky. It involved more deception, more waiting. But it felt like our best chance to give Rob undeniable proof without directly involving Thomas further or relying solely on audio recordings he might dismiss. "We'll need a good camera. Well hidden," I said, thinking aloud. "And the documents need to look convincing. Leave that to me," Margaret grinned. "My nephew works in IT. He owes me a favor. And I know a guy who used to do prop documents for amateur theater. He can make anything look official." The plan felt audacious, dangerous even. But the thought of Amelia manipulating my son, mistreating my grandson, and plotting to steal Robert Sr.'s legacy fueled my determination. "All right," I agreed. "Let's set the stage for Amelia's final act." We spent the next few days preparing. Margaret procured a tiny, high-definition camera disguised as a smoke detector, which her nephew expertly installed high on the study wall, offering a clear view of the desk. Meanwhile, Margaret's prop-making contact created a convincing-looking portfolio cover labeled Legacy Holdings, Private Equities, containing several pages of official-looking but ultimately meaningless financial jargon and charts. The trap was ready. All we needed was for Amelia to take the bait. The bait was laid. The fake portfolio, labeled Legacy Holdings, sat prominently, yet not too obviously, on Robert Sr.'s old mahogany desk in the study. The hidden camera, disguised as a smoke detector, watched silently from above. Now came the hardest part, waiting and acting normally. It felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm. Every interaction with Amelia was fraught with tension. I had to maintain the facade of the trusting, slightly dotty grandmother while my insides churned with anxiety and repulsion. I made small talk about the weather, complimented her cooking, which felt like swallowing poison, and inquired politely about her marketing projects. She, in turn, continued her performance, showering me with false concern, asking if I needed help managing my bills, subtly suggesting Rob was worried about my memory. "Joanne, are you sure you took your heart medication this morning?" she asked one day, her brow furrowed with feigned worry. "I just want to make sure you're taking care of yourself." The implication was clear, chipping away, building her narrative of my supposed decline. Thomas remained my anchor. His quiet presence, the way his eyes sought mine for reassurance, reminded me why I was doing this. I made sure to spend extra time with him, reading stories, helping with homework, creating a buffer between him and Amelia whenever possible. Margaret and I checked the camera footage remotely each night after Rob and Amelia were asleep. For 3 agonizing days, nothing. Amelia entered the study only briefly to retrieve a pen or a file, never lingering near the desk. Was she suspicious? Had we made it too obvious? Then, on the 4th evening, it happened. Rob had called to say he'd be working late. Amelia fed Thomas dinner, her patience visibly thin, then sent him to his room to play video games. The camera feed showed her glancing towards the hallway, ensuring she was alone, before purposefully walking into the study. My breath caught in my throat as Margaret and I watched on her tablet screen from her kitchen miles away. Amelia went straight to the desk. She picked up the Legacy Holdings portfolio, her movements quick, furtive. She flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning the fake financial jargon. We saw her pull out her phone, snap pictures of several pages, her expression a mixture of concentration and avarice. Then, she put the portfolio back, adjusting it carefully to look undisturbed. But she wasn't finished. She then tried the locked drawers of the desk, pulling gently at first, then more forcefully. Finding them secure, she frowned, then scanned the bookshelves, running her fingers along the spines as if searching for something specific, perhaps a key, perhaps another hidden clue to Robert Sr.'s wealth. Finally, seeming frustrated, she took out her phone again and made a call, her back partially to the camera, but her voice captured clearly by the hidden microphone component. "Yes, I found something else. Legacy Holdings. Looks like offshore stuff. Private equity. No, I couldn't get into the locked drawers. Yes, send me the link for that locksmith again. The sooner we get full access, the better. Rob? Still clueless. Joanne? Getting more forgetful every day. It won't be long now. She hung up, a smug smile playing on her lips. She gave the room one last look, then walked out, closing the study door softly behind her. Margaret and I stared at the screen, speechless. It was all there. Her snooping, the confirmation of her intent, the sooner we get full access, her plan involving a locksmith, her manipulation of Rob, and her chilling assessment of my forgetfulness. It was the smoking gun, caught on video. "We got her," Margaret whispered, her voice filled with grim satisfaction. "Now, we just need to show Rob." The final piece of the trap was ready to spring. We just needed the right moment. The opportunity presented itself the following Saturday. Rob had the day off, and Amelia, perhaps feeling confident after her discovery in the study, suggested a nice family brunch at home. "I'll make my famous quiche," she announced brightly, the perfect hostess. It was the ideal setting, relaxed, domestic, with Rob present and unsuspecting. Margaret agreed to drop by unexpectedly around noon, providing moral support and an extra witness. The morning passed in a haze of forced pleasantries. Amelia bustled around the kitchen, humming, while Rob read the newspaper, oblivious. Thomas played quietly with Legos, occasionally glancing nervously at Amelia, then at me. I focused on setting the table, my hands slightly trembling, the weight of the impending confrontation heavy in the air. Just before noon, Amelia proudly presented her quiche, golden brown and fragrant. "Doesn't this look wonderful?" She beamed at Rob, who readily agreed. As she cut the first slice, the doorbell rang. "Oh, I wonder who that could be," Amelia murmured, feigning surprise. I went to the door. It was Margaret, holding a casserole dish. "Joanne, I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop off this mac and cheese I made too much of," she said, her voice carrying easily into the dining room. "Oh, Margaret, what a lovely surprise. We're just sitting down for brunch. Do join us." I invited her in, playing my part. Amelia's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. An unexpected guest wasn't part of her plan. Margaret settled in, chatting amiably, praising the quiche, effectively disarming the situation while adding another pair of eyes and ears. We ate in relative silence for a few minutes, the tension palpable beneath the clinking of forks. Then, I took a deep breath. "Rob, sweetheart," I began, my voice calm but firm. "There's something important we need to discuss. Something about Amelia." Rob looked up, surprised. Amelia immediately tensed, placing her fork down. "Joanne, must we do this now?" she asked sweetly. "Can't it wait?" "No, Amelia, it can't," I replied, meeting her gaze directly. "It's about what Thomas told me, and about what I've discovered since." Rob frowned. "What did Thomas tell you?" "What's going on?" "Thomas told me," I said, keeping my voice steady, "that Amelia says cruel things about his mother, Maria, when she thinks no one is listening. He also told me he saw her photographing your father's private papers in the study." Amelia gasped dramatically. "That's absurd. Joanne, how can you believe a child's imagination over me?" "Thomas, tell them it's not true." Thomas froze, looking terrified, tears welling in his eyes. He looked from Amelia to Rob, then buried his face in my side. "It is true, Daddy," he mumbled into my dress. "She said mean things." "Amelia, how could you?" Rob asked, his voice shaking slightly, looking utterly bewildered. "Rob, darling, he's mistaken," Amelia insisted, reaching for his hand. "You know how children are? And the papers? I was just tidying up. Joanne is twisting things. Maybe she's confused." "I'm not confused, Amelia," I interrupted, my voice hardening. "And I have proof." Margaret chose that moment to speak. "Actually, Rob, Joanne isn't confused at all. We've been quite concerned, so we took some precautions." I pulled out my tablet, which I had placed beside my chair. "Rob, I need you to watch something." Amelia's eyes widened in panic. "Joanne, don't be ridiculous." "What is this?" I ignored her and pressed play. The video feed from the hidden camera filled the screen. We watched in silence as Amelia entered the study, looked around furtively, picked up the fake portfolio, photographed the pages, tried the locked drawers, and then made the damning phone call. Her voice, crisp and clear through the tablet's speaker, filled the dining room. "Yes, I found something else. Legacy Holdings. Looks like offshore stuff. Send me the link for that locksmith again." The sooner we get full access, the better. Rob? Still clueless. Joanne. Getting more forgetful every day. It won't be long now. The color drained from Rob's face. He stared at the screen, then at Amelia, his expression shifting from disbelief to dawning horror, then to a deep, gut-wrenching betrayal. Amelia lunged for the tablet. "Turn that off. How dare you spy on me?" But Margaret calmly blocked her path. "Sit down, Amelia. There's more." "More?" Rob whispered, his voice hoarse. "Yes," I said, my heart aching for him, but knowing this had to be done. I took out the small audio recorder I'd used earlier. "Remember when you told Thomas that this is your house now, and threatened him if he told me?" I played the audio clip, Amelia's cold, sharp voice contrasting horribly with her current tearful facade. Rob flinched as if struck. "And remember the phone call about the retirement fund and the main trust?" I played that clip too. Rob listened, his face pale, his hands clenched into fists on the table. He looked utterly broken. "Amelia," he began, his voice choked with emotion. "What is this? What main trust? What have you been doing?" Amelia opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted around, looking for an escape, a denial, but the evidence was overwhelming. The mask had shattered completely. Cornered, exposed, Amelia's composure finally snapped. The tears of feigned innocence turned into tears of rage and desperation. "All right, fine," she shrieked, jumping up from her chair, knocking it over with a clatter. "So I looked at some papers. So I want a better life. Is that a crime?" Rob stared at her, aghast. "A better life? By trying to steal from my mother? By planning to what? Have her declared incompetent? Locksmiths? Trusts? Your mother is sitting on a fortune." Amelia spat, gesturing wildly towards me. "Your father's trust fund. She doesn't even know it exists. She lives like a pauper while we struggle. Rob works himself to the bone. And for what? To support her in this big old house?" The mention of the trust confirmed everything. Rob looked at me, confusion warring with the horror on his face. "Mom? A trust fund?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said softly. The pain of Robert Sr.'s secrecy mingling with the current crisis. "Your father set up a substantial blind trust for me, and eventually for Thomas. Mr. Jenkins, his old lawyer, confirmed it. Amelia found out somehow, likely from those papers she photographed, and has been trying to access it." "She doesn't deserve it," Amelia screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She's old. What does she need all that money for? We need it. Thomas needs it for his future. I deserve a comfortable life, not this." Her sense of entitlement was breathtaking. She genuinely believed she had a right to Robert Sr.'s carefully planned legacy, a right earned through marrying his son. Margaret, ever the pragmatist, interjected calmly, "Deserve it or not, Amelia, trying to access it through deception, possibly forgery, hiring locksmiths for illegal entry, and plotting to undermine Joanne's competency is criminal." "I didn't plot anything," Amelia sobbed, clutching at straws. "I was just exploring options. For the family? By calling my mother forgetful? By talking about getting full access?" Rob's voice was dangerously low now, the hurt replaced by a cold fury. "By telling Thomas this is your house and threatening him? He's a difficult child," Amelia retorted desperately. "He still worships Maria. He needed discipline." Thomas, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up, his small voice clear and steady despite his tears. "You said Mommy Maria was stupid for dying. You said I was stupid like her." The simple, devastating accusation hung in the air. Rob closed his eyes, a single tear escaping. The final nail in the coffin of his illusions about Amelia. He opened them again, and the look he gave her was devoid of any remaining affection. "Get out," he said, his voice flat, empty. "What?" Amelia stammered, looking genuinely shocked, as if this outcome was inconceivable. "Get out of my house," Rob repeated, enunciating each word. "Pack your things and leave, now." "But Rob, where will I go? What about us?" she pleaded, trying to grasp his arm. He pulled away as if burned. "There is no us. There hasn't been for a long time, apparently. I just didn't see it." Amelia looked wildly from Rob to me, then to Margaret. her face contorted with rage. "You! This is all your fault!" she screamed at me. "You and your meddling friend! You ruined everything." "No, Amelia," I said quietly, meeting her hateful gaze. "You ruined everything yourself, with your greed, your lies, and your cruelty." Defeated, sputtering incoherent threats and accusations, Amelia finally stumbled towards the hallway, then upstairs to pack, her sobs echoing through the suddenly silent house. The brunch lay forgotten on the table, the quiche cold, the atmosphere thick with the wreckage of shattered trust. Rob sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Thomas climbed onto his lap, patting his back awkwardly, a small boy trying to comfort his heartbroken father. Margaret and I exchanged a look. The immediate battle was won, but the war's fallout was just beginning. The aftermath of Amelia's exposure was swift and brutal, though not entirely in the way we expected. As Amelia packed her bags upstairs, sobbing and occasionally throwing things, Rob made a phone call. It wasn't to a divorce lawyer, not yet. It was to Arthur Jenkins, Robert Sr.'s attorney. Rob needed to understand the trust, the extent of his father's hidden wealth, and crucially, how Amelia could have possibly known about it or planned to access it. Mr. Jenkins confirmed the trust's existence and its strict stipulations. Only I had access unless proven legally incompetent. He also revealed something Robert Sr. had included as a failsafe. Any attempt to fraudulently access the trust or challenge his competency would trigger an immediate notification to specific legal and financial authorities, along with a dossier Robert Sr. had compiled on potential risks, including, Jenkins hinted, early concerns Robert Sr. had harbored about Amelia's character even before the marriage. While Amelia likely didn't know about this trigger clause, her actions, snooping, photographing papers, discussing access and locksmiths, were exactly the kind of behavior Robert Sr. had anticipated. Her call to the unknown person discussing full access was likely her attempt to find someone who could help her bypass the legal restrictions, possibly through forging documents or finding loopholes. When Amelia finally came downstairs, dragging 2 large suitcases, her face swollen and defiant, Rob confronted her one last time. "The trust, Amelia. How did you plan to get it?" She initially refused to answer, but faced with Rob's cold determination and the knowledge that Jenkins was now involved, she partly confessed. She admitted to finding vague references to investments in Robert Sr., the tapers, hiring a financial investigator, likely the recipient of the $5,000, to dig deeper, who then uncovered the existence of the blind trust. Her plan involved systematically building a case for my incompetence, using doctors, manipulated evidence, and potentially forged documents to eventually petition a court for guardianship, thereby gaining control of my finances, including the trust. She didn't get into the specifics of the locksmith or further illegal steps, likely realizing how deep a hole she was already in. Rob simply told her to leave the keys and get out. She left without another word, slamming the door behind her. We didn't call the police immediately. The recordings and Jenkins's information were strong, but prosecuting felt complex, especially with Rob's emotional state. However, justice found Amelia in other ways. Rob filed for divorce the next day. The evidence Joanne and Margaret collected, including the videos and audio recordings, made the process swift and left Amelia with nothing. No spousal support, no claim on assets, due to her demonstrated deceit and emotional cruelty towards Thomas, which we documented carefully for the proceedings. Her financial investigator contact likely vanished, especially once lawyers got involved. The $5,000 was gone. Her reputation at her former workplace, Rob's company, was destroyed, leading to her quiet termination. Without Rob's financial support and with her own modest income likely gone, combined with potential debts Margaret had hinted at, her future looked bleak. We heard through mutual acquaintances months later that she had moved out of state, struggling financially and socially isolated. For us, the justice was quieter. It was the peace that slowly returned to our home. It was Thomas gradually losing the fearful, watchful look in his eyes. It was Rob beginning to heal, leaning on me and Thomas, rediscovering the simple joys of family without the constant filter of Amelia's manipulation. The trust Robert Sr. had built remained secure, a silent testament to his foresight, ensuring a future for me and Thomas, safe from the greed that had almost torn us apart. A year can change everything. 12 months after Amelia's dramatic exit, the house felt lighter, breathing again. The oppressive tension that had lingered for so long had dissipated, replaced by a quiet, resilient peace. It wasn't the boisterous happiness of the past, not yet, but it was a genuine calm, earned through confronting the storm and surviving it. Rob had emerged from the ordeal a changed man. The divorce, while painful, had been a necessary amputation. Losing Amelia forced him to confront his own gullibility, his willingness to overlook red flags for the sake of perceived happiness. He threw himself into therapy, sorting through his grief not only for his failed marriage, but for the years he'd spent subtly distancing himself from me and Thomas under Amelia's influence. He also took a long, hard look at his work-life balance, realizing he'd used his job as an escape after Maria's death, inadvertently leaving Thomas more vulnerable to Amelia's manipulations. He started coming home earlier, making a conscious effort to be present. Dinners became family affairs again, filled with conversation, not silence. He'd help Thomas with his homework, attend his school events, and sometimes they'd spend hours in Robert Sr.'s old workshop, tinkering with wood scraps, Rob patiently teaching Thomas the basics of carpentry, just as his father had taught him. Thomas blossomed. Without Amelia's constant, subtle undermining, his natural confidence returned. He laughed more freely, chattered excitedly about school and friends, and the nervous, watchful look in his eyes faded, replaced by the bright curiosity of a healthy 10-year-old. He still talked about his mommy Maria, but now the memories were shared openly, tinged with love rather than the forbidden sadness Amelia had imposed. He developed an even stronger bond with me, his partner in uncovering the truth, his steadfast anchor. As for me, life found a new rhythm. With the knowledge of the trust, financial worries evaporated, but I found I didn't desire drastic changes. I continued to live in the house Robert Sr. and I had shared, its familiarity a comfort. The hidden wealth didn't change who I was, but it offered freedom. The freedom to help Rob and Thomas without constraint. The freedom to pursue things I'd put aside. I started volunteering at the local library again, reconnecting with my love for books and children. I took a gardening class, finding solace in nurturing new life in the small patch of earth in the backyard. Margaret remained my rock, our friendship deepened by the shared ordeal. We met regularly for tea, sharing stories, laughter, and the quiet understanding that comes with age and experience. We even took a small trip together, a weekend getaway to a coastal town, something I hadn't done in years. The trust fund remained largely untouched, a safety net for the future, for Thomas's education, for unexpected needs. Rob, aware of its existence now, insisted he wanted to stand on his own feet financially, rebuilding his life through his own efforts, a sentiment I respected deeply. Our family wasn't the same as it was before Maria, or even before Amelia. It was smaller, quieter, marked by scars, but it was also stronger, more honest, built on the foundations of hard-won truth and a renewed appreciation for each other. We were survivors, learning to navigate the future together, one day at a time, finding peace in the simple, enduring power of family love, tested and proven true. Looking back on that tumultuous period, the sharp edges of pain have softened, leaving behind the dull ache of memory and the clarity of hard-earned lessons. The most profound realization was the insidious nature of manipulation, especially when cloaked in affection. Amelia hadn't arrived with horns and a pitchfork. She came bearing smiles, compliments, and an uncanny ability to mirror our needs and desires. She preyed on Rob's grief and longing for companionship, on my maternal instinct to see my son happy, on Thomas's vulnerability as a motherless child. Her poison was administered slowly, drop by drop, disguised as care and concern, making us doubt our own perceptions. It taught me the crucial importance of trusting one's intuition. For months, small alarms had sounded within me. A discordant note in Amelia's laughter, a fleeting coldness in her eyes, a dissonance between her words and actions. I had silenced those alarms, telling myself I was being judgmental, overly sensitive, or simply resistant to change. Thomas, in his childlike innocence, saw the truth unburdened by adult rationalizations. His fear was pure instinct, a reaction to the genuine malice he perceived. I learned, belatedly, to listen to those inner whispers, to honor the gut feelings that warn us when something is fundamentally wrong, even when the surface appears placid. The ordeal also underscored the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences when it's broken within a family. The betrayal wasn't just Amelia's. It was also Rob's unwitting complicity, his blindness, willful or otherwise, that allowed the situation to escalate. It forced us into uncomfortable conversations about accountability, about the responsibility we have to protect vulnerable family members, about the courage it takes to confront uncomfortable truths rather than retreating into denial. And finally, I learned about resilience, not just my own, but the resilience of love itself. Discovering Amelia's deceit felt like an earthquake shattering the foundations of our family. Yet, in the ruins, something endured. The bond between me and Thomas strengthened into an unbreakable alliance. The love between me and Rob, though tested and strained, found a new, more honest footing. Even Robert Sr.'s love, reaching across the years through his foresight and planning, proved resilient. We learned that true family isn't about perfection or the absence of conflict. It's about navigating the storms together, holding on to truth, and finding the strength to rebuild. Even when the damage seems irreparable, the scars remain, a reminder of the darkness we faced, but they also testify to our survival, to the enduring power of love to heal and find its way back to the light. And so, my friends, that is my story. A journey through shadows I never expected to encounter in my own home, guided by the innocent eyes of a child and the enduring wisdom of a love that transcended even death. It was a difficult path, one paved with heartache and disbelief, but ultimately leading to truth and a stronger, more authentic bond with those I hold dear. Did you find resonance in my story? Have you ever had a gut feeling, an intuition about someone that you initially dismissed, only to find it held a kernel of truth? I truly hope sharing my experience might offer some comfort or perspective if you've faced similar challenges. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to know how far this story has traveled. Please, share your thoughts and perhaps your own experiences in the comments below. Your insights and shared wisdom mean the world to me and create such a wonderful community here. If my story touched you, or if you simply appreciate these kinds of real-life narratives, please consider showing your support. Liking the video and subscribing to the channel helps immensely, allowing me to continue bringing these stories to light. And if you feel particularly moved, sending a super thanks is a wonderful way to contribute directly. Every bit of support is deeply appreciated and helps keep this channel going. Looking for more? On the screen now, you'll find 2 more life stories, handpicked for you, that delve into the complexities of family, betrayal, and resilience. I highly recommend giving them a watch. There are many other journeys waiting for you right here on the channel. Thank you truly for spending your time with me today, for listening with open hearts. Your presence here makes sharing these often difficult stories worthwhile. Until we meet again in the next life story, please take care, trust your instincts, and cherish the genuine connections in your life. Farewell for now.